Welcome to the second ever week of the Hard Tag podcast with Tom Bellchambers, Cal Hooker, and my name's Jack Post. And we're so lucky that the first hard tag we get to put on a player is ex-captain Jobe Watson.
Yes, you are fortunate. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm a little disappointed it's taken until episode 2 to get me on, but I understand that I'm no longer at the top of the tree, the hierarchy tree, but thank you anyway.
Well, episode 1, we honestly didn't even know if it was going to air because the club gave us no indication that they wanted us to do it. We just sort of said, we'll come in and do a pilot. But they put it out during the week, and we were overwhelmed with the response we got as well. So thanks to everybody who listened and shared it on Facebook and social media. But Jobe, thanks for coming in.
No, I know that the 10 people that came and spoke to me about it, how good it was. So your audience is extraordinary, boys. Well done.
What's the vibe around the club this
Captivating amongst the hall room.
There was a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk.
In the showers, in the spa. You know, all anyone could talk about was hard tag and who was next on hard tag.
You're very fortunate to be on here. A lot of boys wanted to come on, so we picked you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think you probably, if everything's looking back over the things, you're probably in front. So I'm glad that you're doing something nice for me.
Well, the indication that the club gave to me when we came up with the podcast that Tom and Cal are very well respected around the club. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think that given their height, they're probably people respect them because of their physical nature. Their stature demands respect. Their behaviour is probably something else. Would that be accurate, you two?
10 years in the football club, and that's how you respect us.
This weekend, Jobe, you've announced your retirement, obviously, for the end of this year. So it makes this weekend's game a little bit strange in the fact that it's not guaranteed that we'll play finals beyond next week. How does it feel coming up to a game where you're not really sure if it's going to be your last appearance or not?
I guess there's a little bit of sadness attached to be the last home game that I play in front of the Essendon supporters. So it'll be exciting and a bit of sadness, but I think my two nieces are going to come out with me, which will be really exciting for them and exciting for me, and a lot of friends and family are going to be there. So we know what we have to do. We pretty much control our own destiny, and if we play well and win, then it'd be fantastic to have a finals campaign. But it'll also be really nice to say goodbye to a home crowd and a home game, and thank everyone for their support. Yeah,
we're really looking forward to it. I did a little bit of calculations, and even if we lose on Sunday, there's a slim possibility if a couple of other teams lose that we can make it through. But best win, I think, to guarantee us that finals experience. How was your experience different to other players coming into the club, do you think? Because your father played, obviously, for Essendon, and you spent a lot of time around the club, you had a different experience to a lot of other players.
Yeah, I guess the club was sort of a lot of it was at my upbringing and being there, and things that were normalised to me are probably different to other people growing up and being in the rooms and being at the footy club and knowing the players and knowing the staff. So I remember when I first arrived, you know, there was a lot of familiarity about returning back to the club, which is probably different for a lot of other draftees. But it was just as nervous as what everyone else is when you first arrive at a footy club. There's a lot of trepidation and people are, I guess, a little bit unsure about their role, and especially when you're 17 and you still look up to all those guys that you first become teammates with. So I was just as scared as what any sort of first draftee is. It's just that it was probably more familiar for me.
Yeah, right. And Tom and Cal, how can you compare it to your own experiences? We didn't talk last week about your first days at the club, but how did you find it coming to Essendon for the first time?
Yeah, I actually found it really daunting. Came over from Tasmania. I didn't get drafted in the initial draft, so I came over and did a bit of training with the football club for I was meant to train with them for a week, and they sent me home after 2 days, and they didn't say anything to me. So I thought, oh no, that didn't go well.
Send you home as in back to Tasmania?
Back to Tassie after 2 days, and I didn't know it at the time, but they'd already made up their mind that they were going to take me in the pre-season draft. And I went back to Tassie, didn't hear anything from them for about a couple of weeks, and then I got taken in the pre-season draft. So I thought, it was a bit of a surprise to me. And then, came over and started training with the guys. I lived with 2 other players early days, which was good for me, I think.
Who were they?
I live with Sam Lonigan and Andy Lee, no longer at the football club, but, great guys, both Tassie boys as well. So I had that connection there. And then we had a really strong draft that year. Obviously, Hooksy was that draft, Tate Pears, Dave Myers. We had some really good players, good young players, and that probably made the transition a bit easier for me as well.
Yeah, I came obviously over from Perth, and I had no idea about the history of the club and that sort of thing, so I was pretty impressed by that. And I wasn't spoon-fed like Jobe was as much growing up, so I had that sort of harder thing and sort of
I actually didn't know who Kale was until after his third year. We roomed together on a footy trip, and then when I first met him, I had to introduce myself when we were getting the keys from the reception desk in Thailand.
That was the first time he said hi to me.
Is there a bit of general hazing to younger players like that where you have to appear a bit more intimidating than you might otherwise be?
I think you have a little bit of fun with it, especially if there's a young guy who's a little bit ahead of himself, or he's got, it's just got a little bit of a big head. Then normally it's not so much on in the locker room or anything like that. It's on the field, in drills or something. That you get,
you soon put them back in their place.
Yeah, they get knocked around a little bit, but one of the things that is always really fun was the footy trips and being able to bond with young guys. So you spend a lot of time with them in a work environment at the club, but you've got guys who are 30 with families and an 18-year-old. There's not a lot of social interaction during the year, but then that opportunity to get to know each other actually is really worthwhile for bonding.
So how would you cut down, with want of a better term, a young player? Let's use Andrew McGrath, for example, because he's the first number one pick that the club's had. How do you just make sure that he doesn't get ahead of himself?
I was going to say line him up in a drill, but I couldn't catch him, so that's no good for me.
Luckily, you don't need to with Andy because he's an absolute A-grade citizen. But I guess if it got to a stage where you felt like you needed to, then there's the leadership group, or there's some guys are pretty good at giving feedback. So things get knocked on the head pretty quickly. There's not a lot of schoolyard sort of whispering behind the sheds or things like that. If someone doesn't like something, it's a competitive environment and there's a lot of testosterone. Things normally get said or done. So you find that things don't sort of fester away for a long period of time.
Do you guys, any of you, remember a specific talking to you got early days at the club?
I think with us coming in, you got taught how to be professional and to stop drinking so much beer and to eat properly and that sort of thing, where these days it's the other way around. The kids are so strict on their diet and so professional. You're saying come out and have a beer and loosen up a bit and have some fun. So times have certainly changed, but
I got a couple of talkings to early days. I remember getting one, and the leadership group was in the room, and
Were you part of the leadership group?
I was part of the leadership group, and the problem that the Thomas and his other rat bags had made is they didn't get their story straight, so we separated them.
They hit us early up in the day, like it was first thing in the morning.
So what happened? What did you do wrong?
I think we'd been out on the weekend, and it was a 6-day break, and
one of the players was injured. Which was not allowed to drink.
Was obviously not allowed to drink, and then.
I didn't know that. Is that a known rule across all clubs, pretty much?
Pretty much. I reckon it's pretty universal. Right. So anyway,
does it hamper the
recovery?
Yeah,
definitely.
There you go.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously we didn't get our story straight enough in the morning. We didn't have enough time, so we got put in, we got one by one. We got put in front of the leadership group and the coaching group, and they tore shreds off us. And I think I wasn't the one to crack, but I think a couple of blokes cracked and they gave in and they gave away the full story and who was
that's
there.
Almost worse from you than if everybody else has caved in and you said, we did nothing wrong and us we're by the other boys.
We play a team game. I thought, everyone was... Some blokes are in it for themselves, though.
It was very funny on the other side because you'd hear one person's story, then the next person would come in and then a different story, and then the eyes would start darting from side to side, the palms would get sweaty, and eventually they just crack and they just be this volcano of information.
So in the leadership group, is it you're mad, or is it more we're really disappointed with you?
Yeah, it's a bit of the parent one where you're not so mad, you're just disappointed.
Because they've been there themselves at times.
Yes,
so, it's
everyone goes through it,
exactly.
and it's just part of growing up.
I had a look at your Twitter last night, and I love infrequent Twitter users. I'm one myself. But
not overly active.
Not very active. So you put up 2 or 3 posts a year, and it makes it seem like you've really thought about those posts and really wanted to get them up. Can you remember the only 2 posts you've done this year on your Twitter account?
I did one with my dog with the boots.
Yeah, I think that might have been the end of last year.
That was the end of last
You
year.
made a spelling error.
I made a spelling error. It was supposed to be "Hey mate," and I wrote "He mate." So obviously a lot of thought went into that. Actually, one of them that was made this year was not done by me at all. I left my phone open in my in the locker room, which is a no-no.
Right.
And I came back, and someone had posted the video of Scott Gumbleton, my housemate, next teammate, taking a hanger for Banyule.
Right, so that wasn't you that posted that?
That wasn't me who posted it.
Oh, because that gives us the indication as just a fan following along that Jobe Watson is still like looking out for the players that used to be at the club. And look at this. He's just taking the time out of his day to show us Scott Gumbleton taking a mark at suburban footy.
Completely false.
Well, I mean, and people who know me know that couldn't be further of the truth. I had absolutely no interest. So I went on a witch's hunt trying to find out. And eventually I found the weak link, and Michael Hurley came up to me and said, "I have to confess something. I have to apologise. It was me. I'm sorry."
So you no need to delete it then. You just keep it up there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know what the other
The other one was more recent than Scott Gumbleton taking a specky. A recommendation for the Freakonomics radio podcast.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that
please explain.
Ted Richards, a friend of mine, he passed that on, and he wanted me to. He's involved in a business that's Six Park, it's sort of investing and things like that. So he asked me to retweet it for him.
No plugs on this show, mate.
Sorry, I didn't realise.
Was the particular episode?
Yes, it was about exchange.
Richards?
It's about exchange traded funds and indexes and things like that, which is what his company works in.
Oh, right. Because
Yes.
I thought you might be a podcast guy, and I was going to ask you.
I
for
do
some
like
more.
a podcast.
Yeah, give us
I'm
some recommendations.
I'm a big true crime fan, and
Very
so
popular.
Case File. Case File is done by an Australian guy, actually. Case File True Crime.
Have you heard Trace?
No, but it's very similar to Trace. I've been told about it. That I have
that's
to
a
get onto.
Melbourne-based one. Very good.
Yeah.
Had the feeling that Kale and Tom had never heard a podcast before we started this show.
I must admit, I was I had to go home and Google it and just make sure what I was in for.
Hooksy's a bit coy. He would
a
know
new
what.
experience.
No, it's not. You know all about it.
All right. I forgot to even play a siren. Last week we cut this episode into 4 parts, and I forgot to play the first one. But I think that will close this quarter. And for the second quarter, I think these guys have got some tricky, curly questions to throw at
Some
you.
hard hitting. Well, thankfully I'll have a right of reply, which should be good.
Started off.
Well, you've sort of led us into this with what you've revealed about yourself already, and that's about knowing your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, lots of players come through the club over the years, so it is hard to keep track of all of them. You're a busy man. You're out of the game, obviously, so we just wanted to have a couple of questions and just see how much you do know about your teammates.
This is not fair.
Well, the first question is, what of your teammates' playing number is number 17, number 31, and number 37?
You have 15 seconds to answer
Jumper
the question.
numbers.
17, 31, and 37.
We can edit out long pauses if you like.
James Stewart,
Yep.
17. There's no 31. What were the other two?
37.
Is he right about that? There's no
He's
31?
good so far. He's good.
Dylan Clark.
You've nailed it.
Very
You've nailed it. You've nailed it.
I was
now.
worried about that, though.
So are we.
Is there more pressure on you when you are captain to know more about the club, and this year when you're not captain anymore, you don't have to care as much?
You would think so. From the outside looking in, you would think so.
I could only use my behaviour as an example to answer that question.
Now, we've spoken briefly about the young boys.
Yes.
There's a clubhouse in Essendon, right?
Yep.
Which of the young boys live in this clubhouse?
Can I first ask what that means?
A clubhouse is basically
a share house of
house,
club players.
yeah, of
Right.
players.
How many players have to be in a clubhouse before it becomes a clubhouse?
There's-
That's a good question.
Like, is it just the two of you sharing a house? Was that a clubhouse?
no, well,
The club organises
the club
the
organised
clubhouse.
it basically. So it's a group of the younger players in
They'll
this
put a
particular-
mentor. They'll put a mentor in, like a guy from the fitness department, or to teach the players how to live and how to cook. And
Right,
had to
and he
school him
lives
up a
with them
bit.
the whole time.
So he lives with them and
Right.
schools them up a bit.
In this
Not to be confused with the Dallas Cowboys of the early 90s White House that they used to have.
in this
Very
particular
different.
house, there's 4 players. Can
It's
you name them?
Aaron Francis,
Correct.
Kobe Much,
Correct.
Sam Draper, and Alex Morgan.
He's good.
Very
And is the
good.
clubhouse in Essendon or is it somewhere else?
It's in the northern suburbs.
And who's the official who has to take care of the 4 of them?
Desmond O'Sullivan.
Desi.
Yeah.
Desi.
He's good.
Which of your teammates grew up in Mount Barker, which is about an hour and a half out of Adelaide? 10 seconds.
Mason Redmond.
Incorrect. I just made that up. There's no one that grew up in Mount Barker.
I had a cousin who grew. My cousins lived in Mount Barker for a while.
Trick question.
Where to get you on something?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
We do want to know about your pre-game routine the day before the games. You like to come in and impress the boys. You lived in New York for a
yes.
period of time, so you obviously learnt the New York fashion. And are we going to see something special this week for the farewell game?
Self-proclaimed fashionista.
Yeah, well, I used to get a lot of negative feedback about my outfits that I wore, so I decided to change tact, and I would come with a best dressed outfit each week, the day before the game. So each week I come, and I do a bit of preparation in this, and I try and dress smartly just to raise the standards, because I'm sick of people walking around in tracksuit pants and thongs and
Nothing wrong with
all
tracky pants,
that
mate. I'm running a pair at the moment.
So I thought, like, let's make ourselves look a little bit dapper, and I'll start it, and hopefully the trend will catch on. It's yet to catch on, but
How long have you been doing it for?
well, it's been every round since the start of the season, so I get a lot of feedback.
He's
But
had
no
20
one's,
attempts.
And how well dressed is well dressed?
I'm yet to rock a suit, but I don't know. It might be something that I'll do at the end,
Ooh.
maybe a dinner suit or something like that, the final one. But I make an effort to, like a coat or a jacket, and it is a talking point when I arrive. I normally get the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and
It's like a catwalk. and
yeah, there's a
people
little
can
bit
find-
of there's some judging going on. Yeah,
It is good fun. It does get the boys going in the morning.
Is that
Yeah.
because the day before the game you don't have to train? And that's
No.
why you rock up in the Sunday best.
no, I just thought it was just a fun thing to do.
more
just
So you
Saturday-
still then get
Saturday
changed
night.
into your kit?
Yeah,
and
we
go out.
go out and train, but I
Right.
just thought I'll have a little bit of fun with it, given that I've got a undeserved reputation of being an ordinary dresser.
Well, this week is a
As you said before, behaviours speak louder.
as a homage to you, the players should all dress in their best.
That is an excellent idea. That is an excellent idea. I think we should do something along
Come
those
on,
lines.
you guys-
We'll save that for Mad Monday. All right?
You have respect around the club, can't you? Get everybody dressing really nice on Saturday.
Well, this week, apparently, Jobe's got his own faces coming out. I think 10,000 faces are going to be at the ground, so maybe everyone can dress like Jobe Watson.
They passed me those actually, so the club passed these on. These are masks that will be
very
had
nice.
on Sunday. Do you know how people get them? I guess they just get them as they come in the
I
door.
don't know.
I think they just give them away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
That is a good-looking Jobe Watson, though. I've seen it. I've seen a Jobe Watson. That's a good-looking version.
I must
Sound a
admit,
lot
I think
worse.
there might have been a bit of teeth whitening on the photo.
so there's going to
There's an
be
Instagram filter on that, I reckon.
thousands of these Jobe face masks on Sunday at Etihad.
Won't that be wonderful to look into the crowd and see
I'm gonna
myself
say,
everywhere?
I feel like if anything's going to throw you off, that's going to throw you off.
There's a bit of being John Malkovich about it.
Club Hub Gate 2 and 5 at Etihad on Sunday. People can grab the Jobe mask, but I tend to agree with you. It's going to be a weird thing to look at, and
Yeah.
especially like imagine kicking for goal, and then all you see is a little 100 mirrors of yourself.
Oh, dear. Wonderful from the marketing team. Thank you. It's the thought that counts.
Brilliant.
We asked overnight for some questions on Facebook and
Sure.
and Instagram. We only grabbed a couple, but there are a couple of good ones, so I thought I'd read them out to you now and see what you think.
Okay.
Tim Williams asks.
Tim Watson asks.
Well, it's about Tim Watson. Tim Williams asks, both in your primes, would you be able to outplay your father?
I don't think so. I think that he might have had me just for a yard or two of pace. He was pretty quick, the old man.
What about if I was rucking?
Oh, maybe if Thomas was feeding down my throat, I might be able to get an early touch in. But I don't know if over the 20 or 30, I would be able to keep up with him.
Can midfielders suck up to rucks to get more taps their way?
Yeah, it's a little bit like
do you play favourites?
Yeah, it's a bit like the quarterbacks do with the offensive linemen. We just sort of take him out for dinner and all sorts of things.
No, it's not like that. I was about to say, I think they buy them Rolexes and cars and that kind of thing. So it's definitely not like that. We've got a bit to go there.
There's a little bit of difference between the wages between the quarterbacks and the AFL footballers.
True.
Simon Gleeson asks, what's your honest opinion of Cale Hooker's man bun?
Well, it's nice of Marty's dad to ask about us this question.
Is that Marty Gleeson?
I don't know.
I'm going to say, you do know players after all if you can name everybody's parents.
I actually wouldn't mind asking Hooksy about in regards to your man bun, because what I think it does do is it people can associate Cale with something. So it's easy for fans to associate Cale with something. So Joey, are you a little bit dirty that you didn't get the NAB Auskicker on the ad? Because Joey got it, but I thought if there was a ponytail,
very good
it was
question.
very easy for people to know it was Cale Hooker.
I wouldn't say dirty, I'd say surprised.
You know what? Because actually, for those ads, they obviously look for iconic-looking players.
Exactly.
So
The man bun would have been great.
Very easy.
Rocking the beard, the man bun.
There's some feedback for next one.
I wonder how close you got to it. They would have done a short list, and then it might have been at one stage you up against Joe Danaher, and then they've pushed you out. But I didn't know who Joe Danaher was in that ad when I saw it for the first time.
You would have known
really?
if it was me, wouldn't you?
Yeah. If it was a man bun, I would have known.
Well, I reckon Hep might be a bit dirty.
Yeah,
I thought that was the
Hep
only
would
reason
be
he was
flat.
keeping the dreadlocks was to get on the NAB ad.
That's a good point.
Oh, there was someone showed us a photo.
Oh, there we go.
That looks nothing like me.
So is that really from the ad?
Is that
And he
you?
just hasn't made the
Is
final
that you,
ad.
Basil?
One of you, the social media guy from Essendon is just showing us a photo that apparently there was a young Cale Hooker, but he hasn't made the final cut of the ad. Can we put that up on Instagram and Facebook over the week?
And it looks a lot like the social media guy at Essendon.
For some reason, he feels that Cale's got a red beard as well.
All right. Melanie Kelly, what is the best prank you've ever done or received from a fellow teammate?
Well, one stands out for me is, and it was in response to a prank done to me. So Angus Monfries, who was at the club for a period of time, I moved into a new house and I kept ordering the Foxtel man to come out to hook up the Foxtel, and he kept on ringing up pretending it was me and cancelling it. Went on for about 2 weeks, and eventually I found out it was him, and I was really dirty on him. So
you could argue that actually interrupted your skill on the field because you weren't able to watch any non-free-to-air games and learn more about your opposition.
Correct.
As a student of the game.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a fair point.
How much footy do you guys watch just of other games over the weekend?
Bits and pieces, yeah. It just depends on what day you're playing and when the games are and what you're doing on the weekend. But generally, I mean, if you're playing on a Saturday, you're pretty sore on the Sunday, so you're not really doing a hell of a lot. And you always like to watch the team that you're playing the next week. So that's sort of me.
Yeah, I'm normally the night before a game. Like if we're playing on a Saturday, I watch a Friday night game.
To remind yourself of the rules, etc.
Exactly. Just to pick up on what the umpires are doing that round in there. But yeah, that's about it. I'm probably 1, max 2 games a week.
Is there anybody at the club who doesn't watch any games?
No, I think most guys would
Most
watch
blokes
some
would.
form of footy, yeah. When we get a lot of vision sent to us about the upcoming opposition as well, so there's opportunities to watch clips.
Georgie Dennis, will you ever open a cafe in Melbourne? Of course, you got the cafe in New York that you plan to go to after your retirement. Will you head back over there?
Hole in the wall.
Will we ever see one in Melbourne?
That might be a good little opportunity for me to do. I think that could be part of the growth, to get behind the machine over here and open one. It's pretty competitive here. The standard's pretty high, so I'd like to do something maybe with the family at some point down the road. All my sisters are sort of in hospitality or love food, and something like that would be nice.
Tell us a little bit about New York. Actually, I know you've spoken about it a lot over the past couple of weeks, but when do you plan to go? How long are you going to stay there for?
Yeah, I'll head off mid-October. My girlfriend finishes exams then, and then we'll go. I'll probably go for about 7 or 8 weeks to New York, and then I'll be back. She's got to finish her undergrad in 2018 back here, so she actually sort of moved halfway around the world to come and finish her study for me, and I think the least I can do is stay here while she completes it rather than heading back over. So I'll be here for most of next year as well, travelling to and fro from New York, but predominantly here.
You guys have a dog together? Is that?
We've got it's a bit of a sore point at the moment. The dogs. I've got a bulldog, and he's just had an ACL operation, so he's in a fair bit of pain. So I'm looking after him. And
is that ironic for a dog to have such a football's
injury?
Injury.
I think if you looked at him, you'd probably see the stress he's putting on his ACLs and ligaments. Wouldn't be surprised.
All right, last one from people sending in questions on Facebook, and thanks to everybody who did. Will there be any special deal on coffee at Hole in the Wall for Essendon members?
Yes, I'll make sure that there is. I'll make sure that my next Twitter post will be me working behind the machine in Hole in the Wall for people who follow me on social media.
And that could be any time from now to the next 3 years.
Correct.
The game on the weekend, congratulations to the Essendon Footy Club for defeating Gold Coast 90-57 at Metricon Stadium. Pretty comfortable win in the end. Although, how do you guys feel about that term, a comfortable win? I mean, you probably still put a lot of effort in. Yeah, people call it a comfortable win.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's never easy to win. And sometimes, as you said, you've got to put the same effort in at the start. And sometimes you feel like you want to be on top, but it takes longer and longer just to get on top of the game. And it can take a while to actually crack the opposition. And Gold Coast started pretty well. They kicked the first couple of goals. And then I think the fridge was on fire, Josh Begley. Kicked a few goals and got us going, and then it was a bit of an arm wrestle, and we managed to come away in the third quarter and sort of get a bit of a break and then finish it off in the last quarter.
You guys both played fantastic games, Tom and Cale, on the weekend. Do players have any awareness of their AFL fantasy scores after a game?
No, I've never done fantasy. I'm not one for the. I'm
lying through their teeth.
I'm not one for
lying through their teeth.
You just,
it is the first and only thing they care about.
You just sit out of this segment. Thank you. No, I've never done fantasy football or anything like that. So no, I'm not aware.
There are a few people who look up at the scoreboard to see their stats, but I'm not one of those blokes.
You're right.
I'm not a big statistician, so I don't. I don't look.
Because it's becoming. I feel like year on year, the fantasy score gets a bigger headline in this stats book and, you know, what people talk about. So I wondered if that was filtering through the club. As a big fantasy footballer, I'm very aware of it, but I wondered, would you guys even know your fantasy scores from the weekend?
Couldn't tell you.
I wouldn't know that.
Jobe, do you think they know?
Yeah, absolutely. And the younger guys, they're all over it. That's all they care about.
The younger guys,
they know their score at half time. The younger guys,
they do.
It's true.
So, is there any worry then that people start to favour their fantasy score other than playing a team game?
I think you'd hope that surely that's not possible, but it is something we do talk about. I'm sure all teams do. Is that kicks and handballs and those sort of scoring mechanisms aren't the priority. It's the team stuff, and your role can be pretty complex for the team. So it's about focusing on your role, and we make sure internally we reward all that sort of stuff, all the acts that are the team acts, and we try and make sure we're a good team rather than a good fantasy team.
Jobe, where did you watch the game on Saturday?
Where did you watch the game?
I was at home. I was nursing Benson, who I picked up from his surgery. He was on the couch next to me, and I was in between putting a cold towel on his forehead and watching the game. So I was sort of running around.
You were going to say you're in between Game of Thrones and the
game. Well, I am looking forward to going home and watching it tonight.
Is he got his leg elevated and all this stuff?
Yeah, we did a strict RISA, which is rest ice elevation compression, after the referral, after the surgery, and he's on the mend. Actually, he's starting to look a little bit more sprightly, which is nice.
Do you talk out loud to the TV even if you're watching alone?
Only when I'm cursing Cale and Tom, which
didn't happen much on the weekend.
Which was quite frequent.
All right, guys. I'm going to do a little bit before we end the third quarter of pump them up, throw them under. Jobe, you get to choose whether you want a question about pumping somebody up or throwing them under the bus.
Okay.
We'll actually go around so everybody can play, but we'll start with you, Jobe. Do you want to pump somebody up or throw them under?
I'm happy to throw someone under the bus. I'm retiring.
You would.
Which player gives the worst pep talks?
You're not allowed to say yourself.
Yeah. I was excellent at them.
Did you ever struggle knowing that you had to give a pep talk to find something new to say that you hadn't already said?
Well, apparently I had quite a tick that I used to do. I used to always clench my fist and slap it into the palm of my other hand. And I never realised this until the guys started laughing when they saw it. And then I caught them looking at each other and I lost my train of thought. So that was one of the ticks that I used to have.
I think that's something that all great leaders have, though. I remember Obama's was always like the thumb on the top of the finger, and once you'd noticed it, you would notice it time and time again.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a powerful move until the boys all clocked onto it, and then it just became funny.
Yeah.
One sticks in my mind for pep talks.
What's that, mate?
Was it the Fremantle game? Do you remember?
I think we were playing West Coast.
West
at the time,
Coast.
yeah.
West Coast. I don't know if you want to.
Well, I gave one of my best speeches before a game against West Coast. We were over there playing it towards the end of the year, and we needed to win to make finals. And we were 6 goals down at quarter time after my pep talk.
After your pre-game?
After my pre-game pep talk.
Didn't quite hit the spot that one.
Didn't hit the spot. Andrew Welsh was he was knocked out. I got knocked out. And then we were both on both concussed, talking to each other on the bench, and neither of us were making any sense at all. I asked the coaches at the time, which was Hurdy. I told him to put me on, and I'll kick 5 in the last quarter, and we'll win the game. And then when they said that we're not, I said, "Tell Sheeds to put me on, and I'm going to kick 5 in the last quarter."
I assume you didn't play again for the match, and you did not get the 5 goals in the last quarter.
No, it didn't happen.
All right, Tom, we'll move to you. Do you want to pump somebody up or throw them under?
I'll pump someone up.
Same question, but reverse. Who gives the best pep talks at the club?
The best.
As a player?
I'd probably say, I have to say Hep, because Hep gives pep talks every week, pre-game and that kind of thing. And Hooksy and I are actually speaking about today. His one on the weekend was pretty good. We were saying that it'd be difficult to, basically what we were just talking about, to come up with something new every week. I thought Hep's on the weekend was pretty good, so I'll give him a pump up there. But
it must be a tough skill. Well, obviously Joe mastered it, but to come up with something all the time on the spot, it must be difficult at times.
Heavy weighs the crown.
How do they choose? How do you choose if it's not going to be the captain for somebody else to give a pep talk? Or can, when you're in that huddle pre-game, can somebody just step up and go,
Anyone can.
I feel like it at the moment?
Anyone can, but yeah, it's generally the captain that
it's probably easier in the heat of the moment if you're feeling something to say it, whereas it could probably be harder if you've got to force it and sort of think of something on the spot.
So have you ever seen someone you weren't expecting to speak all of a sudden step into the middle and start giving a pep talk?
I think it happens. It happens on game day at the breaks, but yeah, you don't see it as much in team
It's quite
meetings.
nice though when someone does. I remember Paddy Ryder, who was a pretty quiet sort of guy. He at one stage I think it was a 3/4 time or something, and he got everyone in and said. And when that happens, you sort of think, everyone's invested and they know and meaning a lot to everyone, and it's a sign of a good side, I think.
Yeah, I imagine it'd be effective on its own just because somebody who's not usually talking stands up to talk. So
Exactly.
Tom and Cal, you guys don't give too many halftime speeches or anything?
I spray the mids out in the ground most games, but that's just a bit of general feedback.
Cal, do you want
Hooksy's
to
pretty good at it too. Hooksy
I'll
gives
sneak
some
a
good
few in
feedback.
here and there. I'll sneak it in.
do you want to pump someone up or throw them under?
I'll pump someone up as well.
Best trick shots. Have you seen any guys at the club doing trick shots from the boundary or?
Are you setting up Dyson Hebel here with his poo trick shots on your social media? Because they're not the best ones. The best trick shots, it'd have to be Waller, McDonald, Tip and Woody. He's amazing, his skill level. He stands behind the boundary and kicks goals from where the crowd watch the game. And he's pretty special out there. And that goal he kicked, I think it was against Collingwood, was it? Where he was through the legs and then he ended up kicking it right on the goal. He's pretty impressive. That was a moment where I was just glad to be out on the ground watching the game with him.
So do you see guys at training practicing those kind of shots?
Connor McKenna.
Yeah, the Irishman.
The Irishman. Obviously grew up with the round ball over there. He's pretty freakish what he can do with the ball as well. Even pre-game on the weekend, I was just kicking the footy with him out there on the ground, and he did a few tricks, and I didn't even try, obviously. But yeah, he's pretty freakish.
Jobe, do you want to pump someone up or throw them under?
Well, I should pump someone up now. I've thrown someone under.
Who's mature for their age? I guess some of the young guys.
I'm classified as a young guy also.
Are you still young, are you?
I'm still young.
Yeah, you're under 30, so I consider you young. I wouldn't consider you mature, but Andy McGrath is obviously a standout. He's this sort of guy that I think anyone would be happy to let their daughter marry. But they actually
You don't have a daughter, do you?
No, I don't. No.
Sister?
Yeah, I've got 3 sisters.
So you'd have no problems with your sister marrying Andy?
No problems at all. You two, on the other hand, I wouldn't want you anywhere near it. Nowhere near it.
Why? That's not fair.
So he would. The young guys are all very impressive this year. We've got a really good group. No real rat bags, but probably Andy's the standout.
Tom, you want to throw someone under or pump them up?
Throw them under.
Who's always late?
Who's always late? Oh, good question.
Or has anyone been famously late at the wrong time?
I've got a good one.
Oh, there's
for this,
a good
but
one.
there's
Yeah,
a really good one.
And he's sitting in the studio.
No, it's not me.
Oh, Jobe at the
Jobe,
10. At the 10.
yeah,
you can tell that story. I'm not.
Well,
Yeah.
Jobe had this
This
big.
wasn't the one I was going to say.
He gave a big speech the day before about punctuality and about professionalism and how important the season was. And then he was living with Aaron Francis, and we're waiting to run at the 10, and Jobe's not there, and Aaron's not there either. And we think something must have happened to Jobe, obviously, because he's never late. Anyway, he was waiting for a coffee, so him and Aaron are waiting for coffees, and their coffees are late. So they turn up with 2 coffees in their hand, late to training.
That is true.
What's your story? What have you got?
Well, we got called. This is when I was younger. We got called in to a meeting, an emergency meeting. This was around the time 2007. So it was a lot of conjecture about whether Sheeds would go on or not. And we got called in for a 12 o'clock special meeting for the club to announce that they weren't going to renew Kevin's contract.
And did you know that that's what it was about?
No,
when
we
you were
didn't
getting
know
called in?
beforehand. So this had been, I think, 27 years. So icon of the game and of the club. Angus Monfrey sleeps in. We had weights in the morning. He went home, had to sleep, missed the meeting. Arrived. And thought, what's happened?
I guess on the bright side, he can't get reprimanded by the coach the next season.
That's true.
Moving into the last quarter, Jobe, we like to look ahead at the next game. And, of course, we've got Fremantle on Sunday at Etihad. I'm going to ask you a few questions about Freo and see how well you know your opposition in a segment we're calling Know Your Enemy. Before we get into the questions, Fremantle obviously got thumped on the weekend by Richmond. Does it make it hard going into a game when a team gets killed by so much?
What is difficult is the last round of the year. Because players know that this is their last effort for however long it's going to be. It's much like the first round. There's some real anomalies about how teams perform and how they play. And so that's something that is really that you have to be mindful of, is that the team that you're playing, hopefully we're looking to finals, but for them it's their last game, and there seems to be that extra effort that is given.
What do you think of their new ruckman, Sean Darcy, and they're calling him Hodor? Does that scare you, Tom?
We actually got suspended, so he's out for a week.
Oh, is he not playing on the weekend?
He
He
out,
got
is he?
suspended.
We've got our own Hodor as well, don't we?
Fridge.
Fridgie,
Fridge,
yeah.
Fridge.
He's
They
just-
mentioned that on the telecast
Yeah.
on Saturday night. Why double nicknames?
I'm actually not too sure about this order
Yeah,
one. I
he's
didn't.
more
I
than
think
Fridge.
Yeah, Fridge is from the physical.
I'm not a Game of Thrones.
So this is
person,
Josh
so-
Begley. He
Josh
played his
Begley.
first game on Saturday night. Really impressed in his first game. And I know you guys last week were calling him the Fridge.
Yeah.
Is it Game of Thrones? This Hodor?
Yeah, Hodor's
Yeah.
the Game of Thrones
Yeah.
character. I think people think that he looks a little bit like Hodor, which is not a compliment.
Right. I don't actually watch Game of Thrones, so as you probably
Yeah,
tell,
I'm
because
not
I didn't even
familiar.
pronounce it right. Here we go, Fremantle. I'll ask you 3, or I've got even 4 questions about Freo, and you can just work as a team to get them right.
Mm-hmm.
How did Fremantle select Nat Fyfe as captain?
A team vote, I'm going to say.
Player vote.
Player vote. I'd never heard of that. So players vote 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of different players they want as captain.
Is that right?
Yeah.
When we did it, it was a dictatorship. So I just said that I'm going to be captain.
And as every year rolled around, you said, hey, guess what? It's going to be me again.
And anyone that wasn't happy with that
See you
just
later.
disappeared. We didn't see them off the list. More of an authoritarian style.
What do you think of that? How do you think it would go down at Essendon?
Well, I think we actually do have a vote.
Yeah, we've got a
As
similar
much as we
system.
mess around, yeah. So we do vote, and that counts towards the captaincy, and the coaches look at that and make the decision from there.
All right, so it's sort of like this half plebiscite postal vote they're having at the moment. Like you vote,
Yeah.
but they just make their own
They make
decision
their
afterwards.
decision.
Right.
So at least we feel like we voted.
Yeah,
Feels
that's
like, feels like it's a democracy. Yeah.
And is that the same for the leadership team there? You get voted into the leadership group?
Well, maybe we've discovered something. Maybe that's what really happens. What Jobe's saying, they just choose it. and it doesn't even matter.
That's why I take the paper slips when you write the names down, and then the just results magically appear.
Who is the older brother, Brad or Stephen Hill?
Stephen.
Yeah, I'm going to go Stephen.
These boys going Stephen. I'm Stephen as well.
Yeah, correct. He's 27 versus his younger brother, Brad, is 24. Josh Hill at West Coast is their second cousin. Do you think Josh or Stephen's older?
I'm going to say Josh.
I'll agree with Thomas.
Josh is 28. Correct.
Well done.
Thank you.
Name 3 players who moved from Essendon to Fremantle. And I only really started this list after 2005, so don't go back to the 90s because I don't have all the names.
Todd Ridley, Derek Kickett.
But interestingly enough,
Tony Delaney.
I read that of those picks that of those players that went to Fremantle, some of the picks they got resulted in Matthew Lloyd and Scott Lucas. So we got a very good bounce from that. But
I think they took the balaclavas off after they finished the trade, not before.
Got to be post 2005 from the list I've got in front of me.
I'm going to say the opposition coach from the weekend, Dean Solomon.
Correct.
Kepler Bradley.
Correct.
And I think, well, technically he came from Fremantle to Essendon, but they went back to Fremantle. Adam McPhee.
I'll accept it.
Thank you.
Mark Johnson, I would have also accepted, and Scott Gumbleton, even though he didn't play a game at Freo.
He'll be disappointed we didn't give him a mention. We already gave him a mention earlier on in the podcast.
He will be listening as well. So.
To see
He's an avid listener of Hard Tag, he told me.
Is that true? Because we'd love to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Last question is, and maybe we'll do this for every week as well. I mean, this is the last game of the season, but hopefully we play more. Number 6. So who is of your personal number, who is the opposing player for Fremantle? So, of course, Jobe, number 4. Who's number 4 at Freo?
The big ruckman, Darcy.
Correct.
Darcy who?
Mr. Darcy.
Sean Darcy is correct.
Yep.
I'll pay it.
Thank you.
Tom, you're number 2 for Essendon. Who is number 2 Fremantle Dockers?
I'm going to say Brad Hill.
Griffin Logue, or it might be Logie. I'm not sure. Tough.
That was a tough one.
Tough
That
one.
is a tough
That was
one.
a tough one.
Cal, do you know who's number 26 at Freo?
26. I don't know. This is a tough one. I know Kepler Bradley was when he played for
We're
Freo.
not talking retrospective now.
Chris Main?
I know 20. I know it was a chance, but
Can you name anyone in the 20s?
I think Tabernar might be in the 20s.
He might be. I don't know. Ed Langdon is
Ed
the correct
Langdon, there we
answer.
Ed, he will be disappointed about this.
But, I mean, you guys got 3 out of 4 questions, so I think you're suitably ready for Freo on the weekend. Brings us to the end of Hard Tag. Jobe, thank you so much for coming on and being the first ever guest of Hard Tag.
No problem.
Also, on behalf of fans, because you're retiring this year, we just want to say, or I hope I speak on behalf of fans, and when I say thank you for everything you've given us as a player. You've been a joy to watch, and you're such a likeable figure of the club, and you have been for so many years. So thank you so much. Good luck for Sunday's game, and hopefully you've still got 5 games ahead of you, and we'll see you at the end of the year in the Premiership. Boys, any parting words?
We're even bigger and better next week on the guest, so just wait and see who we've got next week.
That's
Thanks for coming on, Wiz. You were fantastic.
I just did
Excellent
this
guest.
heartfelt thank you to Jobe, and I said, do you have any more words? And you didn't even thank him for being here. You just said, we've got someone better than
someone
Jobe.
better next week. This is why I can't wait to get out of the door.
This is how we run on the Hard Tag.
No, thanks for coming on, Joe. Fantastic.